You're listening to Online Pet Health Podcasts with Dr. Megan Kelly. Continuing education for veterinarian rehabilitation therapists. Learn more at onlinepethealth.com.
Hey Vet Rehabbers, it's another one of my Behind the Vet Rehab Practice podcast this week. For those of you that are new to the Veterinary Rehabilitation Podcast, my Behind the Vet Rehab Practice podcasts are one of my favorite interviews to do. What I love about these interviews is that vet rehabbers share with us their wins and their losses. And although it's not great, they made mistakes. When they share them with us, we get to learn from them. And when we find ourselves in that same position, we have hindsight, which we would never have had before. So you get to fast track your success by not repeating the same mistakes that they made. So this week I speak to Chelsea Russell. Chelsea is a human osteopath and has now changed to treating animals. She went on to study further and goes through her plans to start her animal practice. She discusses her fears and the challenges she is facing at the moment. Chelsea has a great outlook and is approaching her business with a definitive, structured plan, which is great because I think it's really setting her up for success. If you own your own practice, we have a great download called 12 Free Ways to Market Your Vet Rehab Practice. Onlinepethealth members, you can log into the members portal and go to the business basics area to find it. If you're not a member, you can download it by going to onlinepethealth.com/12 free ways, and that's 12 the number free ways. You can get your copy now and learn how to market your vet rehab practice. So over to my chat with Chelsea. Hey Chelsea, thank you so much for joining me.
Hi, Megan. Thank you for having me.
Now, Chelsea, you obviously now are treating humans. What happened and what was the shift that made you decide I need to change now and start treating animals?
Yeah, so I was introduced to animals at a very young age. About the age of 7 was the first time I was introduced to horses. And I had always dreamed as a child of working with animals, specifically exotic animals for some reason. But I decided to kind of take the traditional route and enter, the human practice in the human field and treating humans. And so out of high school, I, went off to college and tried university and so forth and found my way. And then the pandemic hit and I was in the middle of my osteopathic program. And I was part boarding a horse at the time, who I still am currently part boarding. And she started to develop some back pain. And she was lame quite often, and we couldn't quite figure out what was going on. So being in the heat of my osteopathic program with humans, I decided to start practicing some of my techniques on her. And so another colleague from class also had a horse as well. So between the two of us and our brains, we kind of helped support one another in saying, we can do this. We can use our human techniques and we can apply it to the animals, understanding their anatomy. So we started to dive into that. So basically through my own horse's problems is what gave me that push of this is okay. And I think as an adult, we start to realize that we spend a lot of time at work, and I was giving a lot to humans, and working with her, I was able to kind of refill my cup a little bit. So I guess through most practitioners who I've heard on your podcast throughout the years listening, it's often through our own animals' needs that kind of pulls us into the industry and allows that door to open, per se. So that's basically, I always dreamed, and then I always thought that it wasn't quite possible to be an animal massage therapist. I didn't think that was quite a thing. And I just didn't have very much knowledge until I opened that door and was welcomed into the industry. And there's so much there for me to learn. So
yeah, it's so awesome. And like you say, there's so many others that have had a similar story, a dog that either they rescued or somebody gave to them, or, somehow some animal, whether it be a dog or horse or whatever, just takes them down this path and they never look back. Once they start treating animals, it's sort of where their heart and their soul just leads them. So tell us now, after you obviously started treating your horse, then what was the next step that you took? So where are you now?
So right now, currently, we're in 2023. So backtrack a little bit. I graduated human osteopathic school here in Ontario in spring of 2022. And I wanted to enroll into an animal osteopathic program pretty quickly because I wanted to keep learning. I was on such a good path of learning. But I want to mention that I kind of struggled to find a program. From what I've learned, osteopathy with animals is not quite regulated in many countries. So here in Canada, it's not regulated. So technically, I could have graduated my human program and found insurance and just started treating right away, which I felt was very inadequate. I felt like I needed that base knowledge and some technique and some support so that I could continue on that path with animals, because I knew during my human program, my practical hours and the knowledge that I was able to access through my professors was so vital. Although it is very similar, animals in general have completely different anatomy than we do as humans. And so to understand that was a big factor for me. So it took me a little while to find an animal program. And during that time, I had to find some insurance as well because I wanted to start my case studies. So I had to dig pretty deep for that. I will say that I went through about 25 different insurance auditors or brokers, often of which hung up on me, did not want to kind of dabble in the animal osteopathic field. So once I found the insurance to cover me, I enrolled in the program. So that was in May of 2022. And so from then on, I've been building up my case studies, working on as many animals as I can, whether it be cats, rats, pigs, cows, one-eared sheep, horses. I've got a dog of my own. I had a senior dog for a while as well. So I'm really putting my knowledge into practical use. And then hopefully in the next couple of months, I'll be, entering the industry as an animal osteopath, but on the path to continue to learn. So right now I'm kind of in my networking place.
Yeah. So would you mind sharing the company for those that are in Canada, the company that actually accepted you eventually for your insurance?
For the animal, the insurance. So they're actually out of Uxbridge, Ontario, and I can put that in the show notes at the end if you'd like.
That'd be great.
Yeah, it's quite a struggle. And even with that being said, the policy is not completely as specific as I would like it to be, but it's fairly accurate and it covers most of what I would need on the day-to-day basis. But I still feel that is a very big gap in the industry that is unspoken of, because with humans, it was just a mandatory thing for me that I had my insurance and I didn't worry about it at night. But with animals, they're so sacred to us that I wanted to make sure that everyone felt safe and supported when I was present working with their animals. But I still feel like that's a gap that needs to be filled a little bit better.
Yeah, it's a question that comes up quite often in our Facebook groups, like who to get insurance with. And I don't think it's a problem just in Canada. I think it's a problem worldwide. Yeah. And I think probably because a lot of our professions, whether we're osteopaths, physios, massage therapists, whatever we are, we all obviously fall under the umbrella of veterinary rehabilitation therapists. But a lot of the professions are unregulated. And I wonder whether that's the issue there for the insurance companies, is that because it's unregulated, then that's why they sort of say, no, like, we're not going to get involved in this. So I'm sorry that you had such a hard time, but I'm glad that you found something that at least a company that will support you and make you feel like you've got someone on your side.
That's it.
So let's chat about the plans going forward now. So, a lot of the time when I'm interviewing people, we talk about current practice and how they're running their practice. But I'm really excited to speak to you now today because we're going to chat about you like in the early stages, and you're like setting up your practice. So things must be running through your head on how you're going to do that. So do you have a plan whether you're going to treat small animals or equines? What is your thought process regarding the audience and type of patients you're going to treat?
Yeah. So like I said, when I had enrolled in this osteopathic program, I had recently met the current horse that I'm boarding now. And I kind of, the ball got rolling in the light bulb went off then. So that was in 2021, I would say, or 2020 even. And so from then forward, I kind of have been putting out there this ideology of having a good networking base, understanding the industry, observing. I call it, distant researching, because there was a lot for me to pick up on as I was trying to enter the field of working in this industry. Prior to this, it was a hobby of mine. It was a sanctuary at the barn. So to think of going there and having to actually converse and talk about these issues that are going on with the horses was a big thing to me. So I took it quite seriously. So from afar, I've been watching other practitioners and picking up on the amazing work that they've been doing, listening to various podcasts, and reaching out to different practitioners within my area. And then I took the plunge on social media. I revamped my Instagram approximately maybe 8 months ago now. I had to conclude all of my thoughts. Once I graduated the human program and then I was entering the animal program, it was adding a whole other layer to my practice. So for the last little bit, I've been doing my research. And then for right now, building the case studies are very important to me. And then upon entering the field, I will treat it the exact same that I treat my human practice. And that is basically treating anyone who is in need. So I used to say anyone with 4 legs, but technically not everything has 4 legs. Some have 2. So quite frankly, anyone who is open to trying osteopathy and it's indicated for them, that is who I will continue to treat. So I will kind of let that practice pull me whichever way it pulls me, whether it's towards more equine or maybe more canine. I'm not quite sure at this point. I have a feeling it's going to be the equine because that's where my interest really lies. But like that being said, I will treat a chicken on the farm. And then if a rider is in need or someone mucking stalls needs a treatment, then I pop out my table and I help them too. So that is where my practice will initially probably start off.
I like it. That's a good approach. Just see where life takes you. Because lots of doors are going to open. And, sometimes if I think about myself, when I qualified as a vet, I was an equine vet through and through. So if you had to ask me the whole of my veterinary school, what type of vet I'm going to be, I was going to be an equine vet. That was it. And when I qualified, I was going to be an equine vet. And I went overseas and got a job, and it was very difficult to get a job solely as an equine vet without any experience, and got a job at a mixed practice and ended up doing a little bit of small animal, a little bit of equine. And then slowly I just got sucked into the small animal world, and I became a small animal vet from wanting to be an equine vet. So you just never know what's going to happen. So what about the humans? So the 2-legged humans, are you going to close that door? Or are you you've got a practice now, right? Where you're practicing. Is that going to close, or are you going to just sort of phase that out? What are your plans there?
So my plans right now are with humans. I like to focus on, I'd like to say the more catastrophic cases or the more chronic cases. So I have focused on patients with traumatic brain injuries and strokes and so forth. And so I feel as though my purpose lies there as well. So I'm going to try to balance myself between the two. I'm thinking possibly 2 days a week, and this is sorry to my human clients because they're already panicking a little bit. But I feel as though if I can maintain a good balance between my practices, I will be able to kind of offer both modalities or both if I'm able to. Like I said, I can't be too specific, so I'm not sure where it will end up eventually. But for right now, I'm thinking 3 days a week of animals, 2 of humans. But wherever that kind of takes me, I feel like I need to be a little bit pliable to what's going on, right? So yeah, that was the hardest part for me, I think, was allowing myself that freedom to enter the animal industry, knowing that I wasn't giving up on my humans, but the animals is definitely where I get my cup filled a little bit more, I would say. Being outside as well really helps too. So somehow if I can make that work.
There's that saying, there's something about the outside of a horse that's good for the inside of a man.
Yes.
And, I rode when I was younger, so I have the same thing. When I'm around horses, it just really fills my soul. It's like there's just something about being around them. So yeah, I completely understand. Yeah. Where are you getting all your case studies from? So how are you finding them?
Yeah. So that was another bump that I kind of hit in the road. And I was a little worried about putting myself there out online and saying that I was taking case studies and things kind of unraveling and not having control of the situation. So my case studies have all been referrals. So everyone that I've met in the industry, I grew up near Niagara Falls and I'm living in Toronto now. So I'm new to the Toronto equine world, and most of my case studies have come through that, family, friends, and various sorts, just barn staff that I've met throughout the days, friends of friends as well. I find that people will kind of talk of you in the outside world, and then they'll say, "Oh, Chelsea has a really good place with this horse," and those have been some of the best case studies that I've gotten. So organically as well, and
That's great. I mean, the fact that you've really got word of mouth referrals right now, just for your case studies,
yeah,
is really good. Obviously, when you start your practice, one of the hard things is to get those new patients. And so building up your case studies now and building up that word of mouth, it doesn't sound to me like you're going to have a problem in getting your first paying clients.
Yeah, it was always about quality versus quantity to me too. So I knew putting myself out online, there are only a few osteopaths that I've heard of in the GTA, the Greater Toronto area here. And we are all somewhat in contact, which is pretty incredible because technically one day we may be grandfathered. We're not sure our position. So we kind of stick together. And through that, it creates a really good support system. And yeah, so I really enjoy that.
Looking ahead now, looking at and starting your practice, what are the things that you're concerned about? Is there anything that you're thinking, oh, how am I going to do this? Or have you got it all sorted?
Yes, I'm definitely the type of person who thinks maybe 10 or 15 steps ahead. Communication is such a big thing for me. And like I said, this sticking together and this unity is really a big thing. And when we're looking at one problem, we could have 10 or 15 different practitioners and ideas kind of collaborating with one another to see the ideas that we come up with. And so that has been a little bit of a struggle for me, putting myself out there, not always getting the responses that I was looking for, but learning to not take that personally, because that is something that I think in society we're just not very familiar with. But yeah, so that has been one thing. In the equine world, I think we all love our horses so much that we can be a little bit concerned or apprehensive about anyone new entering the industry. And that is why I will be quite honest, I took things extremely seriously in the last couple of years and learning from afar and not judging any situation, just how would I go about that? Or how can I break that down as to how that person went about things? And so that was a struggle. And I think it might continue to be for the next little while. There's not many osteopaths and not many people know about it. And I'm an actual registered massage therapist. And there are many equine massage therapists here in Toronto and internationally all over the world. I'm right now choosing not to take that path because I feel like osteopathy can cover most of my bases as, with massage. So I feel as though with osteopathy in general, there's a lot of unknown and uncertainty. So I feel an immense amount of pressure to go out into the world and educate and inform, and then also learn myself and then re-educate about things. And so that the public really has a good understanding of what we're here to offer. So that has been one of my biggest struggles, I will say.
Well, you're doing a great job of really educating and teaching, because I actually stumbled upon you on Instagram, right? That's where we first connected.
Yes.
So for those of you that are on Instagram, Chelsea has an Instagram page called Healing with Chelsea. Is that right?
Yeah, Heal with Chelsea. Yeah.
And so tell me about your social media approach and what your plans are for your social media page. You come up in my feed all the time. It's probably because I like all your reels and all your videos. So well done. You're doing a great job there.
Oh, thank you. It's something that I think many can relate to, because it's not the most comfortable place, but I feel as though because I sat back and kind of observed and learned and figured out what I wanted my message to be out into the world and how I wanted people to perceive what I was trying to say. I won't lie, I had another Instagram account before this, and it was Chelsea Russell RMT, and I would post things here and there, and I look back at it and I cringe, but I think that's where I was at that place, right? And so I think through growth and through the pandemic, I had a lot of personal growth and time to kind of spend on myself and feeling secure in what I wanted to say and make sure that it was very non-biased. I feel like that's very important, to put out information that won't skew anyone or create emotional relation or, with that post. So I like to just be this is what a contraindication is and this is what an indication is, because many people haven't even heard of those words. So social media is a place for me to do many things. It's a place to meet other practitioners, and it has been wonderful for that. Jumping on Zoom calls, I had a call with someone in New Jersey the other day, and although we can't refer legally because we're across the state from one another, we treat very similarly, and there's so many layovers. So meeting patients, meeting practitioners, and getting the message out there. I have lots of goals long term with this, and I'm excited to see where things will kind of take off. Like you said, I'm in the kind of churning little stage where I'm getting ready. So glad to see it's working.
And then when you're looking at your clinic, you obviously are planning on having a mobile clinic for the animal part. So you'll have your rooms for the people, the two-legged humans, and then you'll be traveling, so having a mobile clinic. I mean, one of the things that I really struggled with when I had, and so obviously I didn't ever treat people, but it's similar for you in that you'll have a premises and then you have to travel to go and see the animals or the horses. And one of the things I really struggled with was having the brick and mortar and the practice treating the small animals, and then having to go and travel and see horses. And I was often late, and you'll go to a stable and then you can't catch the horse, or you can't get in or something, and then you leave and then there's an accident and you're delayed. And now all your small animal clients, and for you it would be all your two-legged human clients, are all standing there or sitting there waiting for you, and then you're delayed. And I must say, for me, that was really stressful for me. I absolutely hated it. And I had to then actually make some decisions as to how I was going to do it. And what I did was I had days rather where I never had to go to some horses and then have to come back to my small animal clients, because that proved to be difficult and I was letting people down, which I didn't like. So those are some of the things that you might have to work out. How are you going to do?
Yeah.
And also juggling, people in different areas and where they are. And then you book an appointment and somebody is like 20 kilometers, let's say, north of where you stay. And then suddenly someone phones and says, oh, I need you urgently to come. And then it's like 40 kilometers the other way, so your boundaries and how far you're going to treat. And all these things are things that you guess are already thinking about, or maybe you haven't. Maybe I've spurred something
No,
in there
I have.
for you.
No,
Yeah,
totally.
so how have you worked out how you're going to juggle that? And have you got an idea about your boundaries and how far you're prepared to travel? Because that's always a difficult one, especially in the early days, because you want to help everyone. And any client is you want any clients when you first start out. But sometimes with the way that you start, then once you start seeing those patients, then they refer more patients to you. And then you end up having this huge, big boundary because of that word of mouth and the people that are around them. So you've got to be very careful when you first start out that you don't end up with such a huge area and you spend so much time in the car and less time actually treating patients.
Yeah, those few things have been some of my greatest fears entering the industry, because with humans, I wanted to help everyone as possible. And I, as an RMT, registered massage therapist, I couldn't get to that point. So that's why I went back to osteopathy school. And then I had the same problem again. How do I help all of these people? There's so many in need. And when you're empathetic, it can be quite disruptive to your own mental health when you want to help people. And if there's preventative suffering that, and it's not happening, it can be very harmful to your mental health as a practitioner. And so I have thought so much about that. And it's hard because I'm from Niagara, so I've got clients down there as well now, and in Durham, and that's about a 2-hour drive. And because there's not too many osteopaths here, I could be stretched out to Ottawa tomorrow if I wanted to. And so having those boundaries in place, I think, is what really drove me to understand the importance of community and understanding that if you have one problem, I think of it as a pie, that there are many solutions. And so I really like to put my place in that pie, but also really pick up on anyone else who might be able to help in that situation. Because I feel as though an osteopath cannot solve all the problems themselves, because there's gut problems, there's hoof problems, there's teeth problems, there's saddle fit. There's many things that are very important. So having those boundaries is something that I've struggled with in my 8 years of practice with humans. And so it's kind of taught me the hard way, unfortunately, on how to say no, or how to say, try this, and this, and then reach back out. I don't feel as though if I come, I could help. And I try to show up where I feel like I can make the most difference and improve on those things, as opposed to creating Band-Aid fixes that might only last temporarily. That hasn't been my motto at all. And hiring help. So I have been wanting to hire an assistant for quite some time now, because with the admin, as you know, it is overwhelming. And when you have a brain that thinks constantly, I'm thinking about workshops, webinar courses, writing children's books about anatomy for humans, dogs, horses, to educate them too. I think that I realized actually in the last 2 weeks I needed help. So I've recently asked for that, and I feel like, okay, I can breathe, because this person can drive me from farm A to B, where I can call, text, do some emails. So that'll be very supportive. But I think being an empathetic person who wants to help everyone, including, my plants and my trees and everything, I have to work at that, forever. So
I think that's really where your networking will come into play, because when you start to know other practitioners that are in the area, you can say like I'd love to be able to help you, but it's a little bit out of my area, but I have somebody else who I can refer you to. And, when I first opened up my practice, that was the one thing that we didn't have. There was another vet and myself. In 2006, we opened up practices. Hers was like an hour and a half away from mine. And so I had someone to refer to if they were there, but we were both fully booked with 3-week waiting lists. And that was the hardest thing for me, to have to say no to people. I actually didn't. I just kept saying yes. I can recall one day, I'm not joking, I had four patients in different rooms, and I was running between all of them. And it was just, it was completely crazy. But like, what do you do? Somebody phones you and says their dog is screaming in pain. And, I know that I can acupuncture them and I could help them. And so you can't say no. You have to say yes. So
that's the thing.
Once, nowadays, if I look at Cape Town where I am, there's so many therapists, and we've got a great group here in South Africa. And so in the whole of South Africa, we have a South African vet rehabers group. Basically, it's a WhatsApp group. And it's so great, because people will just say, is there anybody in, and whatever town it is, and they've got a case that's there and they can't see it, or it's too far for them. And then somebody will say, I see patients there, and then we refer to one another. And it's just this group of, all different types of therapists, this multidisciplinary team, everyone helping one another and referring to one another, asking, for help from each other. So that's something that you could even think about doing, is you could be the person who actually creates that group. Say like, hey, I'm going to start this WhatsApp group, and have everyone, and you can be the connector, the person who and any vet rehabbers out there that are listening to this, it's a really, really great idea and way to network, is to start a group, to start a WhatsApp group, because it's a topic of conversation. Because then you can send them a message and say, hi, I started this WhatsApp group, would love you to join. And instead of just like, hi, like, this awkward, like, this is who I am, and they're wondering why you're contacting me. So you've got actually a reason to contact them. And then what's also really nice is, once you've got that group, is then to have regular meetups. So just say like, hey, next month let's meet up for coffee, and meet up and just get to know people. And you're all in it together. Virtually everyone has got the same heart and soul, and the reason that they're in their passion for healing animals. So it's great to meet up with those people. And now that COVID's over, in person is much better than Zoom.
That's it, right? It can feel a little bit awkward at first, because you feel like you're initiating and it's just kind of uncomfortable. But I like to think of it as, our bodies, and any body and being in general, is a community of systems. And if we don't work as a community, I don't feel as though we can be as helpful and as productive. And it just feels so good to be able to rely on other brains sometimes, because I don't know about you, I'm sure for you, my brain can become very overwhelming and a rabbit hole. And so sometimes I need a little bit of direction from other practitioners, and that really helps. So that's a great idea. And I think I will look into starting the WhatsApp group and taking that plunge.
Yeah. And I mean, and then also, you can be the person to connect everyone. And when you're that person, you're helping lots of other people in many different ways. It's great. It's great for the community. So I think you should do it.
And internationally too, it was such a beautiful thing to look on my followers. And I had someone, like, you were one of the first ones in Cape Town, and then the UK and the States, and even within Ontario. And I think that it was hard for me to kind of think about expanding outside of Canada, because I thought, well, do we treat the same? Is there any commonality? Are there any commonalities? And there are so many that was just like a safety bubble of, it's not all on you to keep, because when does the learning stop, per se, in the textbook style? When do we stop going to school? Or when do we, it's modality after modality after modality. And this is where the networking really just is supportive for that. So help you
And
focus.
Chelsea, if you're looking for a mentor, we've got the Facebook groups, the small animal vet rehabbers and equine vet rehabbers, hydro vet rehabbers, and our business vet rehabbers. We have mentors. So if you're looking for a mentor, whether it be for the business side of things and running your practice, or whether it just be for, treating cases, you're welcome to go into the group there and fill in the form, and we will try and find you somebody to help you, because I know what it's like when you first start. It's very daunting. You're on your own, and you have so many questions. And if I compare it to veterinary, when I first started as a vet, I went into a practice with 4 other vets. So you had some people to ask questions, whereas with vet rehab, I was just on my own. I had to go on it on my own. So you're not alone. We're out here. We're all over the world, and we'll link you up with somebody just so that you've got some support.
Thank you. There's never enough mentors out there. I always thought we were stuck to one until I got 2, 3, and 4. And then I realized, wow, we could have it's the same thing as colleagues, right? And I did notice that on your website, and it seemed very intriguing. I did sign up for the online, the courses as well. And I will be upgrading, because that is a great place to bring everyone, to have the webinars, to have the content and the knowledge, because Google has so much information out there, it can become overwhelming. So you've organized everything significantly, which is helpful on our end, because doing all of that work is time consuming in itself. So
well, I'm so glad that you're enjoying it. And thank you for being a part of our community.
Definitely. Thank you for having me a part of your community.
It's been lovely chatting to you. And I think that we must maybe say, like, in a year's time, we book another interview and we can track your progress and see how your journey into your practice and how things are going in a year's time. How does that sound?
That sounds amazing. We could place bets on what animal pulls me their way, because I adore them all, and I'm very curious to see what's about to happen. So
my bet's on the horses.
The horses.
I think it's the horses.
The horses. They're pretty great, and they seem to need quite a bit of help too. So we'll see what happens.
Awesome, Chelsea. Thanks so much for your time. It's been wonderful chatting.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about all things vet rehab. Now, don't forget to bookmark our next Vet Rehab Summit. This is on Friday the 10th and Saturday the 11th of November. Come and be a part of the world's largest online veterinary rehabilitation conference created specifically for you, the vet rehabber community. Onlinepethealth members, you get VIP complimentary access to the Vet Rehab Summit. For more information about continuing education for vet rehabbers, you can go to onlinepethealth.com.